Girls will be girls. So girls, I've got to share this with you. Okay. We are on the verge of a maximalist renaissance in K-pop, and ITZY seems to have caught on to this early enough and has released Girls Will Be Girls, a 5-track EP that feels like a logical next step after 2024's darker and hard-hitting Born to Be, but really also just a more mature developing of sounds the group have been exploring as early as their debut year. The album's tendency to lean into electro house influences reminds me a lot of the experimental groundwork set up by the ITZY album of 2020. Girls Will Be Girls overall feels like a quick flexing of a long unused muscle after an experimental past couple of years just to make sure it still works. We start off the album with the title track, Girls Will Be Girls, a song that plays with texture and builds up a lot of momentum. Dynamic song sections between the On the Run verses and Call to Arms pre-choruses charge the track with a sense of power that never ends up being used in a meaningful way. The low-strum guitar in the pre-chorus of Girls Will Be Girls gives a western edge to the song, finally invoking the yee-haw aspect to ITZY's identity we haven't seen in a title track since, I think, Not Shy. ITZY has pretty much always incorporated country western influences, both musically and visually, to express themes of rebellion, taking on the persona of an outlaw in the Wild West who makes their own choices and lives according to their own rules, uninfluenced by the understanding of the world around them no matter where they go. It's a pretty unique approach to ITZY's concept regarding topics of self-assurance. Not many people touch country western music styles when it comes to K-pop, but ITZY have made a consistent habit of embracing it quite liberally wherever possible to develop this rebellious persona. I believe we can take these ideas of rebellion straight to the chorus of the song, where we find very simply, girls will be girls, will be girls, will be girls, will be girls. I will not deny, I don't necessarily think this song benefits from the repetition musically. You can extract some thematic ideas from the plain and very insistent delivery, girls will be girls, to emphasize that girls should be allowed to simply be themselves. No other ideas, no more text is added beyond this statement. Maybe girls will be girls is statement enough, important enough by itself to drill into the minds of listeners, or maybe our narrator is very aware that adding more context, explaining the premise of this beyond the simple statement, won't make it any less permeable to scrutiny. You match this continuously repeating, insisting sentiment with the country western influences of the pre-chorus, and we can develop that maybe ITZY means to express and acknowledge that what it means to be a girl inherently is an act of rebellion in the eyes of society. It takes pushing against what people expect of you to simply be the person you see yourself as. Why is it this way? That doesn't really matter as ITZY sees it. It's not their job to help people realize injustice in the world. The world can fall apart around them, as we see in the music video, and ITZY isn't going to be there to fix it beyond for the people they care for and who see them for what they are. They're not here to be anyone's hero, as Yuna says. We all become outlaws together. Girls Will Be Girls embraces the ITZY concept in new and subtle ways, but maybe to some is a little too subtle in the way that it moves. It's not incredibly obvious what this song is getting at, and so maybe unintentionally has the potential to resonate with people as frustratingly vague in terms of sound and meaning. Girls Will Be Girls is a song about a bond between friends that strengthens over time. It adapts ITZY's characteristically different persona for something that prioritizes camaraderie and the refusal to explain yourself to those who would condemn you for simply following your heart. You don't need to explain yourself to other people, hence, Girls Will Be Girls, very simply. The song feels self-aware and even a little self-conscious at times of the fact that its hook sections are too repetitive. We're building up to the second chorus, but instead of actually getting it, the pre-chorus drops us off at a dance break bridge section and then uses the second chorus to end the song. Girls Will Be Girls feels as short as it does because it knows it really couldn't have afforded to throw in a third full chorus without extending the song by another minute, which I don't think is a good thing. The verses and pre-choruses are outstanding in terms of delivery and instrumentation, building up to the chorus, which, rather than feeling like an earned moment of self-realization, it really feels like the non-chorus sections of the song have to work overtime in order to excuse the chorus for being what it is. Girls Will Be Girls starts the first verse off with a relentless supply of stamina, yet the chorus just kind of slowly staggers the built-up pressure as we descend back to the road to pick up where we left off. ITZY excels with drawn-out song sections that are in your face. Untouchable still to this day is the most recent ITZY offering that meets the standard I think a lot of people are looking for from this group. And Mr. Vampire from the same album works as the inverse of this, showcasing that ITZY doesn't always have to deliver a hard-hitting track to develop a compelling performance. If you really stop to pay attention to it, a lot of ITZY songs have remarkably lengthy choruses. Girls Will Be Girls doesn't have enough text to draw itself out in similar ways to songs like Untouchable and Wannabe, but it still tries to do that anyway. There's two repeated lines lines of girls will be girls will be girls will be girls, and by the time we're ready for something with more substance to it, new thoughts, feelings, or ideas, we start each line of the post-chorus with ah ya ya ya, which is an ad-lib that just happened a few seconds ago in the chorus. It really starts to feel like we have nothing to talk about here. In a musical sense, I think this rounds out Girls Will Be Girls on the weaker end of ITZY's list of title tracks. However thematic they could be in terms of meaning, the hooks are simply just too weak to have the responsibility of being a title track. It manifests in new ways with each release, but unfortunately once again, the universal problem plaguing ITZY as a group is that the members are not given enough substance to work with. There's only so much they can do to help emphasize the point of a song that in the end feels a little self-conscious about its own repetition. One thing about ITZY, there will be a B-side on the album that will make me very mad it wasn't chosen to be the title track. There's always one song that seems like such an obvious choice, one that is musically strong but also often thematically stronger than the title track itself. We have songs like Snowy, What I Want, Shoot to a certain extent. On this album, the song in question is of course Kiss and Tell, which, whoa. I think it is actually going to be a single, or at least promoted to some extent. There are audience cheering guide videos that have been released, so it'll at the very least be performed on music shows. Kiss and Tell develops a similar sentiment of the title track, but we get a lot more context and narrative. 3 whole verses and lyrically unique pre-choruses. There's multiple meanings I think you can pull from this song, but when considering the main idea of Girls Will Be Girls, it reinforces choosing to honor yourself is something specific and personal to you. It is a decision made about what you want, and so should be uninfluenced by the world around you. Don't kiss and tell your own intentions, right? That in itself is the recipe to ITZY's success. The very fact that the recipe is in some parts personal to them and cannot be fully shared. It has to be enough that your intentions are sacred to you, enough to be protected. This is the secret to self-assurance. This is the ITZY ethos. It doesn't have to make sense to anyone else, so long as it makes sense to you. Kiss and Tell is very quick in its delivery, making full use of its momentum in ways that Girls Will Be Girls really only wishes it could. A dragging electro house instrumental with brief synth flourishes fixes our eyes upon ITZY as models on the runway. The secret to the model's success, why they're so alluring, is in part due to the silent nature of the profession. If all eyes are on you in this moment, waiting to see what you'll do, it's best to move in silence, to show people rather than telling them. You don't have to explain the way that you walk, nor the way that you present yourself. Show them that it makes sense to you. Being a performance-focused group, dance music is of course a great fit for ITZY. It makes sense on paper and in practice, and again, we got a little taste of that from the B-sides on the ITZY album, but Kiss and Tell so importantly develops this style for ITZY as maturing artists. It is their debut concept, but charged with narrative and sonic depth that makes it a worthy contender for title track. A song that can stand on its own narratively, but also works to express the intention behind this album with serviceable hook sections. I'm very happy it'll be promoted, but will be a little sad if it's not released as a proper single like Imaginary Friend. On first impression, it is the standout from the album by far in all aspects. Locked and Loaded places us back on the horse. We're in Yeehaw territory, 1600s contested Arizona, but not for too long. Locked and Loaded actually rounds out to be more of a rock song, tinged with country western influences in the vocal melodies and a select few instrumental progressions that work to place us with a guitar somewhere in a North American desert. What immediately draws me into this song is how boundary pushing it seems to be for the members themselves. Leah takes up the job of rapping in the second verse. The final act of the song is a dedicated guitar solo. It feels so reassuring to hear ITZY be so willing to experiment with their own style yet still, despite having worked with the pop rock and rock sound for years at this point. It circles back to the idea that this album feels like it's setting the groundwork to move in more pointed directions with these styles, a tasteful reminder that this is who ITZY has really always been for the majority of their career and are ready to take on this new maximalist wave. But funnily enough, and on the inverse of this, the next song is the keys-driven ballad Promise. It is a jarring change of pace, but oddly kind of works. I like it a lot, actually. If nothing else, it's a simple reprieve from the outlaw edge to the EP. Simple but catchy vocal melodies. It may work to sabotage the album cohesion for most people. It is jarring, I won't deny that, but throwing a random ballad in places where they don't belong is a storied K-pop tradition, a hallmark of the genre in many ways. I think I can very much appreciate it in that way. We then immediately step back into the runway for our final song, the dance pop electro track Walk, making Promise indeed just a random ballad to help capture, I guess, the camaraderie focused sentiment of the album concept. Very similar to Girls Will Be Girls, the song Walk kind of gets stunted by its own repetition that tends to overstay its welcome in the chorus. My analysis of this very plainly or superficially is that intuitive, carefree, and confident runway music still also benefits from having catchy and dynamic hook sections. It certainly wouldn't have hurt Girls Will Be Be Girls or Walk to really try to fit more dynamic instrumentation into the chorus especially. I think the production for this album elected to make the hooks so simple to express an air of effortless confidence, paying no mind to onlookers on the runway, but in the end, actually kind of captures the inverse. These songs seem very self-conscious of themselves at times. Overall though, and looking at the Girls Will Be Girls album in full view, we are moving in a very exciting, very promising direction from this point out. ITZY cannot go wrong with experimentation, dynamic, and depth, but those three things need to meet in equal parts. The problem historically is that one or more of these features is sacrificed and not substituted with anything else, and as we saw with the Born to Be album, the end product is an album that has a tough time distinguishing itself as unique in ITZY's discography. Born to Be had, I think, 7 music videos, and yet the album still felt visually and conceptually very vague. There's a lot of cool imagery, but no real aesthetic or concrete enough ideas that anchors the visuals to the narratives. Girls Will Be Girls remedies a lot of these problems. While the hook sections of the title track being weak do cause the project to suffer in some ways, it's still incredibly obvious that ITZY is finding a lot of stability as time goes on. Consistency isn't as volatile as it used to be. This EP is such a good step in the right direction. I really hope they push the boundaries even further with these styles going forward. But yeah, I think these are all of my thoughts on Girls Will Be Girls, the 10th mini-album already from ITZY. My favorite songs right now on first impression are Kiss and Tell, of course, Locked and Loaded, and Girls Will Be Girls. Yeah, thank you for watching this. If you did, please let me know what you think about the album, specifically about the song Girls Will Be Girls and its hook sections. Do you perceive their repetition in a different way? Are they effective at what they do? And so on. Yeah, thank you again for watching. Subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time.